You've had the whole day to do it. You knew it was important. You planned to start early, but somehow hours passed. You checked your phone, watched one more video, reorganized something that didn't need reorganizing, and now it's late. The thing isn't done, and you're lying awake feeling genuinely terrible about yourself. So you promise, tomorrow will be different. It isn't. For decades, psychologists assumed procrastination was a time management problem. People who procrastinated just didn't know how to plan, prioritize, or use their hours well. The solution was better schedules, stricter deadlines, more discipline. It didn't work because the diagnosis was wrong. Procrastination is not a time management problem. It's an emotion management problem. And once you understand that, almost everything about it starts to make sense. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. When you think about a task you've been avoiding, a difficult email, a project you don't know how to start, a conversation you're dreading, your brain registers it as a threat, not a physical threat, an emotional one. Anxiety about failing, fear of judgment, uncertainty about where to even begin. A vague but persistent feeling that you might not be good enough to do it well. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that handles threat detection, fires up. And your nervous system does what it always does with threats. It tries to get you away from them. Avoiding the task makes you feel better. Immediately, measurably. Scrolling your phone, making coffee, doing literally anything else. These aren't signs of laziness. They're your brain successfully regulating a negative emotional state. The relief is real. It's just temporary, and it comes with a cost that compounds over time. This is what researchers Pychyl and Sirois identified in a landmark 2016 paper. Procrastination is fundamentally about prioritizing short-term mood repair over long-term goals. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. Avoid discomfort. The problem is that it can't distinguish between a predator and a spreadsheet. The science goes deeper. Neuroimaging studies have found structural differences in the brains of chronic procrastinators. They tend to have a larger amygdala, more reactive to emotional threat, and weaker connectivity between the amygdala and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for translating intention into action. In other words, chronic procrastinators aren't lacking willpower. They have a nervous system that's especially sensitive to discomfort and less efficient at overriding that signal. This is not an excuse, it's a map. Because if you understand the actual mechanism, you can stop fighting the wrong battle. Consider what willpower-based solutions actually ask of you. They say feel the discomfort and push through it anyway. For some people, some of the time, this works. But for most people, it's like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. You can do it for a while. Eventually, biology wins. There's a concept in psychology called ego depletion. The idea that self-control draws on a limited resource that gets used up throughout the day. Every decision, every moment of resistance costs something. By the time evening comes, the same task that seemed manageable in the morning feels impossible. You're not weaker, you're depleted. And here's the part nobody talks about. Procrastination feeds itself. The longer you avoid a task, the more emotionally loaded it becomes. What started as mild anxiety becomes dread. The gap between where you are and where you should be grows. Now you're not just avoiding the task, you're avoiding the shame of having avoided it. The procrastination becomes its own threat, and your brain, consistent and predictable as ever, tries to get you away from that too. This is why people procrastinate hardest on the things that matter most to them. Not because they don't care, because they care so much that failure feels catastrophic. A student who doesn't care about a class will do the assignment without a second thought. A student whose entire self-worth is tied to academic performance will find reasons not to start for weeks. Perfectionism and procrastination are the same mechanism wearing different masks. There's a historical figure who illustrates this almost too perfectly. Leonardo da Vinci, by any measure one of the most gifted humans who ever lived, was a chronic, almost legendary procrastinator. He took 16 years to finish the Mona Lisa. He left dozens of commissioned works incomplete. He filled thousands of notebook pages with ideas, inventions, and observations that he never developed into finished work. His contemporaries were baffled. Patrons were furious. But historians who've studied his notebooks see something else. A man whose standards were so impossibly high that beginning felt like inevitable disappointment. Every canvas was a test he wasn't sure he could pass, so he kept preparing, kept sketching, kept delaying the moment of judgment. The most brilliant mind of the Renaissance, paralyzed by the same mechanism that keeps you from sending an email. So what actually works? The research converges on a few things, none of which involve trying harder. The first is reducing the emotional weight of starting, not finishing, just starting. There's a cognitive distortion called the planning fallacy, where we imagine the task as one large, overwhelming thing. The brain sees it as one giant threat. Break it into the smallest possible first action. Not write the report, but open the document. Not go to the gym, but put on workout clothes. The goal is to get your nervous system to stop treating initiation as a catastrophe. The second is self-compassion. This sounds soft, it isn't. A 2012 study by Neff and colleagues found that students who practiced self-compassion after procrastinating on an exam were less likely to procrastinate on the next one. Self-criticism, by contrast, increased avoidance. When you feel bad about procrastinating, you avoid the thing that makes you feel bad, which is the task, and now also thinking about the task. Shame is not a motivator, it's an accelerant. The third is implementation intentions, a concept developed by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer. Instead of deciding to do something, you decide when, where, and how. I will work on the report at 9 a.m. at my desk for 20 minutes is dramatically more effective than I need to work on the report. You're not relying on motivation in the moment. You're pre-deciding, which bypasses the amygdala's ability to negotiate. The fourth is the hardest, getting curious about the resistance instead of fighting it. When you notice yourself avoiding something, instead of pushing harder, ask what the avoidance is protecting you from. What's the actual fear? Failure? Judgment? Not knowing how to start? Naming it doesn't make it disappear, but it moves it from something your body's reacting to into something your mind can work with. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It's not evidence that you're lazy, undisciplined, or fundamentally broken. It's your brain doing something very human, prioritizing how you feel right now over what you want in the future. The problem isn't the mechanism. The problem is that we were never taught to understand it. You don't need more willpower. You need to stop fighting your brain and start